Yeah, well, he survives, but he will now have a permanent blemish on his record, and I think it's going to be permanently compromising for him. And the speaker is supposed to preside over the House without any hint of partisan attachment. Now faces a House that pretty much splits up along partisan lines, either for or against him, and that's an extremely uncomfortable place to be.
How embarrassing is it?
It's pretty embarrassing. I mean, I do take with a grain of salt, the fact that he didn't realize that the video would be shown in a more public forum. But even as he himself has acknowledged, it was a terrific misjudgment to appear in his speaker's robes. And the only explanation for it is, he was sort of putting on air. It's got a load of me in my office. Look how formal and fancy this is. And he should have known better. And that was the mistake. And and I think by and large, the punishment is fitting. I mean, to force him to resign, that seems to be over much. But this is gonna effectively taint his term as speaker for good.
A rookie mistake, as some have said. What do you think?
I think so, but he's made two mistakes here, Todd. So he made the mistake of misjudgment of appearing in this video, and some other related mistakes, going to Washington while the state was being debated initially and so forth. It gave off an air of indifference, which was probably unwise. But the more fundamental mistake he made, and I really do think this is important, is that he was elected to this post of speaker, and he knew this without the support of the Conservatives. I mean, they more or less rallied against him. And so he had to recognize that reality, that political environment. He had to recognize that it created a higher bar for him as speaker to hustle over in terms of impartiality and detachment. And he also had to recognize, I think, and should have recognized, that, in the long history of the House of Commons, we've rarely seen a more poisonous or partisan atmosphere. And, making the mistake he did handed the ammunition to people who were poised to be his opponents. And that is a more fundamental mistake. He had to recognize that it would have been smart for him to live a little bit in fear and therefore exercise a little bit more discretion.
Can he move past this?
Yes, he can. But it reminds me of, I'm going to pick a name out of the past, sort of reminds me of the tenure of John Bosley, who was a speaker under Brian Mulroney and was, sort of pilloried and eventually kind of pushed out of his post. I think, like John Bosley, he will now have a forever compromised tenure as speaker. And ironically, now that there is such an incentive on him to be above and beyond politics, his real hope for redemption is that somehow the Liberals can rally, get reelected, and that he will be speaker in the next parliament and after the next election, and give him the time to work with to really repair his legacy. Otherwise, if the Conservatives win the next election, he hits the bricks, and he'll be remembered more for this miscue than anything else.
And obviously, he can't afford to make no more mistakes whatsoever, Scott.
That goes without saying, and you would like to imagine that he recognizes that now. Presumably, this incident has scared the living hell out of him. So he should live with a little bit more attention to detail.
Hey, one final question. So he likely won't resign. He won't be pushed to resign. But should he resign, given everything that's gone on? And what I mean by that is, becoming a distraction.
I don't really like the distraction argument, but I go back to what I said a moment ago, and that is, there is a case for resigning. I don't think he should ultimately, but the case for resigning is, well, recognize that there was a dissenting report from the Procedures Committee. Recognize that the Conservatives lined up against you when you got elected and now have taken this opportunity in this incident to really pound on you. And recognize, therefore, that the House will remain divided. I think the rational reaction to that is, he may have made a mistake, but he's not responsible for the hyperpartisanship that currently grips this parliament, and the kind of bare fang, take no prisoners mentality that currently infects like a fever Pierre Poilievre's Conservatives.
Appreciate your time, Scott, as always. Thank you.
Thank you.